The late afternoon sun turned the sky a burning orange, casting long shadows across the gravel driveway. John Harper leaned against the hood of his pickup truck, arms folded, staring at the fresh blacktop that cut straight through his land like an ugly scar. He could still smell the tar. Sharp, oily, and out of place against the scent of pine that usually lingered on his property. It hadn't been there yesterday. Yesterday, his land had been quiet. A pasture stretched from his barn to the line of oak trees that marked the northern boundary. He'd bought the place for that quiet, for the breathing room, for the way the crickets sang at night when everything else in the world shut off. Now, a road ran directly through the center of it, neatly paved, white lines painted with precision, like someone had decided to lay a knife through his living room table and call it progress. He heard footsteps crunching gravel. Monsieur Harper. A voice rang out. He turned. Striding toward him was a tall man in a polo shirt, coded for a golf game instead of a confrontation. Behind him, a handful of others followed. Clipboard carriers, every last one of them. The HOA board. They looked out of place on his property, like vultures that had learned to walk upright. The tall man extended a hand, all phony cheer. You must be John Harper. I'm Greg Peters, president of the Homeowners Association. John didn't shake it. He just nodded once, slow, letting silence hang. Greg's smile tightened. He pulled back his hand and gestured toward asphalt cutting through John's pasture. Looks good, doesn't it? Brand new road, laid by professionals. This is going to open up access to the whole community. Everyone's property values just went up. That's my land. Greg's smile didn't falter, but his eyes flickered. Technically, it's common access now. See, the community needed a through road to connect the east and west sections. Emergency services, delivery trucks. It's a benefit for everyone. You didn't ask me, John said flatly. One of the board members, a short woman with sharp glasses and an even sharper voice, chimed in. The board voted unanimously. You or wasn't. John cut her off. His voice was quiet, but it carried. No notice, no request for easement, no payment. You brought in trucks while I was at work and paved over land that doesn't belong to you. Greg's tone soured, slipping from fake friendly to defensive. Mr. Harper, sometimes decisions have to be made for the greater good. It's nothing personal. If you don't like it, you can take it up with the HOA directly. I am taking it up with you. John said, stepping closer, boots grinding against gravel. That's my property. You trespassed. You vandalized. You stole. The Clipboard Brigade shifted uneasily. Greg puffed out his chest, trying to hold ground. Now listen, this kind of hostility isn't going to help you. The road is staying. The community depends on it. Frankly, if you try to block access, you'll only hurt yourself. We can and will take legal action. John laughed once. A low, bitter sound. You built a road through my pasture and now you're threatening me with a lawsuit. The woman with glasses spoke again, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. If you interfere with community access, yes, we have bylaws, and you agreed to them when you bought here. John's eyes narrowed. He turned his head slightly, spitting into the dirt before replying. When I bought here, I signed no covenant. My parcel predates this subdivision. My deed is clean. No HOA ties, no restrictions. You don't own me, and you sure as hell don't own my land. For the first time, Greg's face cracked. The smug veneer slipped just enough to show the irritation underneath. But he recovered quickly, shoulders squared, voice booming louder as though volume could erase the truth. Then we'll let the courts decide. If you want to fight the HOA, fine. Just know you'll lose. We have lawyers on retainer, and we don't back down. John studied him for a long, cold moment, was all arrogance, a bully wrapped in legalese and false confidence. Behind him, the board members muttered in agreement, nodding like bobbleheads. They thought they had him cornered, a lone man against a machine built on dues, bylaws, and endless bureaucracy. Finally John spoke, his voice calm, steady the way a storm sounds before it breaks. You think this land is yours now. You think you can walk over people because most folks roll over when you throw legal threats at them. But you made a mistake? Greg sneered. What's that? You picked the wrong man, John said. He turned his back on them and walked toward his porch, leaving the board of fume on the gravel. His dog barked from the steps, tail stiff, sensing the tension. Inside, John shut the door, sat at the kitchen table, and pulled a folder from the drawer. The folder was thick, worn from years of handling. Deed survey maps, property tax receipts, every scrap of paper that proved the land was his. But that wasn't the ace. The ace lay in another folder, tucked underneath, a collection of notes, case files, and bar exam prep materials. Years back, John had studied law. Life had pulled him in a different direction, but the knowledge remained sharp as ever. He knew easement law, property rights, and the difference between an HOA with teeth and one with nothing but bluster. The HOA wanted to fight. He would give them a fight. As he flipped open the deed and traced the boundary lines with his finger, he felt the bitter smile creep across his face. They thought they'd bullied him. They thought he was just another homeowner who'd grumble but cave. They had no idea. He leaned back in his chair, the fading light pouring through the kitchen window, illuminating the roadmap to their downfall laid out in front of him. They really don't know who they're dealing with, he murmured to himself, and the smile widened. The road outside gleamed under the dying sun, black and glossy and temporary, like a shadow that didn't belong. It would not stay. Not on his land. The courtroom smelled faintly of dust and old paper, the kind of scent that clung to spaces where thousands of battles had been fought in silence and echo. John Harper sat at the defendant's table, his hands resting calmly on the polished wood. He wore a plain gray suit. Nothing flashy, nothing to draw unnecessary attention. He didn't need theatrics. He had something stronger: truth. Across from him, the HOA board occupied their seats like smug generals ready to savor victory. Greg Peters, their president, sat the center, his tie knotted too tight, jaw clenched with confidence. His attorney, a sleek man with a gleaming watch, leaned over to whisper strategy in his ear. The rest of the board fidgeted with papers, sneaking glances at John as though he were already finished. Case number 1742, Harper versus the Lakeside Homeowners Association, the bailiff announced, voice firm. All rise. Everyone stood as the judge entered, a stern woman with steel gray hair and a presence that commanded the room. She seated herself, adjusted her glasses, and gave a quick nod. Be seated. The HOA's attorney was first. He rose, buttoning his jacket with unnecessary flair, and began in a voice loud enough to fill the gallery. Your Honor, the facts are clear. The Lakeside built a through road to connect the east and west communities, a project necessary for safety, access, and the general welfare of homeowners. Mr. Harper, while technically the road runs across his parcel, has willfully obstructed community progress and attempted to block access. We are here today to confirm the HOA's rightful authority and to prevent further interference. His words flowed like oil. Slick, polished, rehearsed. He pointed once toward John as though identifying a criminal, then closed his folder with a stamp. In short, this is a case of one man standing against the greater good. Greg Peters smirked, his hands folded neatly in front of him. The judge turned her eyes to John. Mr. Harper, your opening statement. John rose slowly, deliberate, like a man in no rush to prove himself. He placed his hands on the edge of the table and looked the judge squarely in the eyes. Your Honor, he began, his voice steady, unhurried. This is not a case of one man against the community. This is a case of theft. The room shifted. A murmur ran through the gallery, stifled quickly by the bailiff's stern glance. John continued. The HOA did not ask for an easement. They did not negotiate. They did not compensate. They brought in contractors, heavy equipment, and laid down asphalt across land that has been mine. Lawfully, rightfully, for over 15 years. My deed predates the HOA's formation. My land is not, nor has it ever been, under their governance. He reached down, opened his folder, and laid out documents in a neat road deed, survey map, tax receipts, photograph. This road was built without consent. That, Your Honor, is trespass. That is damage to private property. That is illegal. The judge studied the papers, her brow furrowed. Proceed. John walked toward the evidence stand, his boots echoing on the tile floor. He held up the survey map, marked with boundary lines so as you understand them. This blacktop cuts directly through the middle of my pasture. No easement exists, no utility right of way. Nothing. The HOA had no authority, no jurisdiction. And then, when I objected, they sued me, claiming I was obstructing their access. He paused, letting the weight of the absurdity sink into the room. They built a road through my land, Your Honor, and then had the audacity to call me the trespasser. Greg shifted uncomfortably. His lawyer cleared his throat and raised objection. This is inflammatory. Overruled. The judge said sharply. Harper. John set down the survey map and picked up another sheet. This one, a copy of the HOA's own bylaws. He held it up for the court. Even by their own rules, they've overstepped. Their bylaws apply only to parcels bound by covenant. Mine is exempt. Yet they have used their authority to threaten me, to drain me with lawsuits, to force compliance where they have none. That, Your Honor, is not governance. That is abuse. The gallery murmured again. John didn't need to look to know some of those whispers came from homeowners. The very people who you claimed to represent. People who had quietly chafed under Greg Peters' heavy-handed rule but hadn't dared to fight back. John returned to his table, laid his papers neatly, and faced the judge once more. This isn't just about a road. Believes it can take whatever it wants, whenever it wants, without consequence. I ask not only that the court find in my favor, but that damages be awarded for the unlawful use of my property, and that this HOA's authority be reviewed for misconduct. A silence hung heavy after his words. The judge leaned back, tapping a pen against the desk. She looked at Greg's attorney. Your rebuttal. The man stammered, shuffled papers, tried to find footing. But the confidence was too clear, too precise. The map might as well have been a knife through the HOA's case. Finally, the judge set down her pen, her voice ringing firm and final. Judgment is granted in favor of Mr. Harper. The road constitutes unlawful trespass. Damages are to be awarded, and the HOA is barred from further action against his property. Furthermore, given the extent of misconduct presented, this court recommends an audit of the lakeside operations. Her gavel struck once, sharp as thunder. Greg's face drained of color. His attorney slumped in his chair. The board members looked at one another, whispering in panic. John sat down, exhaling slowly. Victory was never sweet in court. It was exhausting, draining, but finally gathered his papers, each one now heavier with the weight of vindication. But he wasn't finished. A month later, the community center buzzed with life. Folding chairs filled the room, homeowners murmuring in clusters, their eyes on the man at the podium. Greg sat off to the side, his face stormy, the weight of his ousting heavy on his shoulders. John adjusted the microphone. He looked out at the sea of faces. Neighbors, families, people who had lived as John aboard that had stopped listening. "My name is John Harper," he began. "Some of you know me. Some don't. What you should know is this. The HOA that was supposed to represent you nearly cost me my land. They thought they could pave over property rights, pave over common sense, and pave over people. They were wrong." The crowd stirred, nodding, murmuring in agreement. "If I didn't fight this battle for myself," John continued, "I fought it because what happened to any of you? And now, with your vote, this HOA belongs to us again. Not to a clique of board members. To the homeowners. To the people who live here, raise families here, work hard to pay their dues here." The applause started small, then swelled, filling the room until the walls seemed to shake with it. Greg stared down at the floor, beaten not just by a court but by the very people he claimed to represent. John raised a hand, quieting the crowd just enough to deliver the final blow. "First order of business, the road through my pasture is gone. Second order of business, no more backroom decisions, no more bullying. This HOA will serve." The roar of approval was deafening. And for the first time in a long time, John allowed himself to smile. Not bitter, not tired, but truly satisfied. The HOA that had tried to break him was his now, and he would see to it that it never broke anyone else again.